Welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast, hosted by divorce financial analyst and retirement planning counselor Andrew Hatherley. Join Andrew and guest experts as they help late-life divorcees build the financial and mental foundation for a meaningful future. There is life after divorce. Now, on to the show.
Divorce represents a major transition in your life. When divorce comes later in life, it often runs into another major transition, retirement. As a financial advisor who works with later life divorcees, I focus on the financial strategies to help you live your best life possible in retirement. But what is your best life possible? It's not just about money. It's a subject we've discussed before on the Great Divorce Podcast, but it's worth returning to and hearing different approaches from professionals who help people make the most of the retirement opportunity. My guest today is Suzanne Campi, a life transitions coach with an emphasis on helping people in retirement. Suzanne is a certified coach and a former fitness studio owner. With a degree in psychology, Suzanne helps her clients look at retirement from an holistic approach. Her work focuses on self-discovery, reflection, purpose, and more. As Suzanne says, more than saving money, retirement is an inside job. Suzanne, welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
We're very glad to have you here today. So, retirement is an inside job. That's a catchy phrase. What do you mean by that?
As far as retirement goes, it's like anything in life, just like divorce is, which is how are you going to go inside, figure out who you want to be in this next phase, and move from here. I find retirement to be such an exciting topic for most, but a lot of people freak out. It's a big change, and humans don't tend to like change. We freak out in limbo. So retirement does involve some limbo. So how are you going to work with it? It's your choice.
It is a challenge for many people. And we have an idea that in our pre-retirement years that there's a beach out there and there's a beautiful golf course out there. But my experience from having spoken to people who've gone through various stages of retirement, and some even have gone back to work, is that the beach and the golf course may be a novelty when you're working, but can become pretty humdrum when it becomes part of a routine. And so I always I read somewhere that in considering retirement, you should always consider that you're retiring to something rather than just retiring from something. And I'm assuming that that your approach with your clients is more oriented towards making retirement a more fulfilling and rewarding, perhaps the most fulfilling part of our life.
Absolutely. I think you've probably seen people being in your business as a financial planner, just like I've seen them when they reach out to me. They thought that, like you said, they thought the beach and golf was going to be the be all end all. And in some cases, I had a client say, I've cooked everything I've needed to cook. I've grown every tomato I need to grow, and I'm a little bit bored. So it's about creating now. I mean, I talk to people about, you have lived 40, 50 years being something for somebody else or being something else, right? Being something for your job, your career. Now you just really go inside, as I said, the inside job, and figure out who you want to be, who you want to create in that next chapter of life. So it's exciting, and I get that it's daunting. I've sat at a table with many a peer that I remember one friend got big, huge eyes and said, I don't want to be alone with Andrew that much, So there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to look at.
That's funny you should mention that, because of course this is the Great Divorce Podcast, and one key cause of divorce among older people is being thrown together in the house after one party retires, and perhaps one of the parties was a hard-driving A-type personality and is all of a sudden trying to rearrange the way everything's done at home, and it can cause quite a bit of friction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the mere fact that the only time they spent over 40 or 50 years, whatever it is, 30, the only time they spent time really together in a concentrated fashion was on vacation. They weren't just hanging out, unless perhaps during COVID, but that was a different story. But do you like to hang out with this person? And
Right.
that's a big thing. I talk about on my retirement wheel. It's one of the 8 aspects of life is relationship. And I make that broad. It's relationship to everybody, but relationship to that spouse is so important because if you're dreading being home alone with that person, might be a good time to take a look with probably a therapist, right?
Or a discernment counselor who works with people to just ultimately determine whether or not they should be together or not. Uh, Quick plug: I actually did a podcast with a discernment counselor, so it made me think of that. You mentioned retirement wheel, and I went to your website, and for our listeners, what is your web address?
It's SuzanneCampi.com.
SuzanneCampi.com. Okay. So you have a wheel of retirement tool on your website, which to me looked quite a bit like another psychological tool called the Wheel of Life. Is it? It's similar, but how is it distinct from, say, the Wheel of Life tool?
Well, spoiler alert, I wasn't too creative on that one. I took the wheel of life and took off things that related to career and finance because I am not a financial coach. I send people to Andrew for that. So it's all the other aspects that I realize people are not looking at when they think of retirement. They think, okay, I saved my money. We were trained to save the money, save the money. I got the money. Now I should be fine. I'll figure it out. I'll be fine.
Right.
Well, have you looked at what your purpose might be moving forward? Are you dialed in for health and fitness and workouts? Because without your body working for you, you're not going to go on those trips or play that golf, correct? So all your relationships, have you looked at what relationships you may have let slip away when you were too busy? Would you like to nurture them and bring them back? Do you want to meet new friends? How do you want to meet new friends? I advise people to really play. What's your recreation? What's your play? Like my play is, I'm lucky because I love to work out. So my play is also my workout. It's the hiking, it's the yoga that I consider my play. Um, what are you going to do to play? What did you like to do as a kid? Um, Novelty, how are you going to learn? Legacy is a big one. And legacy is what indelible mark are you leaving? It's not necessarily financial, although it can be. But your legacy is, I think of what kind of trace do I want to leave on this earth? If I'm poof, gone tomorrow, what are people going to say? I really hope they say, she made me feel special. She made me feel valued. She made me feel loved. That's the legacy I want to leave. Spirituality is the last one on that wheel. And spirituality is anything that's spiritual to you. What makes you reflect, in other words? And we talked about inside job. Um, where do you go for comfort inside? And that's so individual, but it's really fun to have that fallback. It's really fun to be operating from that place of heart and soul. So we touch on all of them.
So there's what, 6 or 8 spokes to this wheel?
There's 8.
So is the idea, because when I think of this tool to kind of understand where our life stands at the moment, is where these spokes are in relation to one another in terms of filling out fulfillment. I suppose that particular spoke can be fulfilled to an 8 out of 10. Maybe your spiritual spoke is fulfilled to a level of 2 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Your leisure spoke maybe 5 out of 10. This is something that's fascinated me. Is there an ideal as to where these spokes should be? Should they be in balance or not?
Well, I'm trying to stay away from letting people should all over themselves. So,
Should all over themselves. You've
you
got
know,
lots of catchy phrases.
well, there is no should per se. It's just something to open your eyes. Is there something you wish? It's again personal. Is there something you would wish if you look at your, say, friendships and that's a 2, it's like, ooh, shoot, I really would like to have more people in my life. It's just an eyeball view and a graphic view. And as you saw, it spits out a little report for you. It's a view on how you want to move forward. So your spirituality might be at a 2 and you don't care, then that's fine. But it's just for you to take a look. I really find that legacy is grabbing people. It's so interesting when you put something out like this in the world, and what people gravitate towards is a little what I didn't expect. And what they love is legacy as non-financial, because people just think of legacy as how much this pot am I going to leave with that organization, with that charity. No, it's what indelible mark is your heart and soul going to leave on this earth and on the people you love. And that's a fun thing to think about. That's a fun thing to dive into. That might be something, once you tune into it, you really move in that direction in retirement.
So visitors to your website will see the Wheel of Retirement and hopefully fill it out. Will that be the start of your discussion with your clients? I'm curious how your process works.
Yeah, they will start hearing from me in emails. Um, Probably starting weekly. We'll get, I say probably because I haven't gotten it going yet, but you'll start hearing from me. And, interesting newsletters, interesting tips and tricks, um, how to move forward in this thing called retirement, which I love to call creating. You're creating a new you. And the fun thing is, and what people don't really realize, is they can absolutely create a new them from almost scratch. It's a time of creation. And I don't, a lot of people look at it, like you said, retirement from something. You're heading into some whole new creation. And it's pretty exciting when you look at it that way.
I love the idea of creation and creativity because it really rings a bell with me. I've written screenplays. I co-wrote a fiction book. I was in a band. We played our own songs on stage, and I like to get back to that more, and hopefully increasingly more over the next few years. And I'm wondering, but that's all things I've done in the past, some of it in the not too distant past, but even this podcast itself, we've done 60 episodes. That's a creation. So I try and maintain that creative spark. But I'm imagining that you come across many people in your work for whom they may have had that spark and it's been completely extinguished over 20, 30 years of work. Any playfulness they might have had as a child or a teenager has been sucked out of them. And I'm wondering, how do you bring these sparks back and help people determine what they're retiring to? What would be a good way for them to spend their life in retirement other than, golfing or laying on the beach?
That's one of the big things we talk about is, what did you do that you loved? Most people that did any kind of art form or music like you're talking about, they would love to go back to that. I haven't heard one person say, oh, yeah, I used to play the guitar, but I don't want to do that anymore. Most people are dying to get things like that back. The piano is a big one. I'm taking piano lessons again, and that kind of thing. What, when you were working, did you think, oh, I wish I had time for Spanish classes? I wish I had time. So many people, big one, taking up a language and taking up an instrument.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're so lucky you have that creative side to you that you've nurtured all along. I bet you know exactly what you want to go back to when you have a lot more time.
I've got a few big ideas. The question is, how am I going to find the time to do them? Because, this is another thing, and this is a complete tangent, but 10, 15 years ago, before I went through my own gray divorce, I had the old-fashioned idea of retirement. I would retire at 60 to a life of leisure and have who knows what I would do. And then obviously there were some financial pressures from divorce because your net worth is split in half. So retirement was pushed out a few years. And initially that was an unpleasant shock to the system. But then I determined, okay, well, what can we do with my work to make it more rewarding, to make what I do more of an authentic piece of what I am and how I can benefit people and use my strengths. And ultimately, it's made work a lot more rewarding. And I've got no plans to retire right now. But Unfortunately, I've got all these creative projects I want to get going as well. So it's not a bad problem to have to enjoy
Sounds lovely.
enjoy your work with creative projects is a pretty good situation to be in. But I know people have difficulty, determining what to do with them, and this is where I suppose the self-discovery tools that psychologists are famous for, and we can get into that in a little bit. But before we do, I wanted to, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of flow as put forward by, I get bonus points if I can pronounce his name right, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. No, I messed it up. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I think is his name. Anyway, that's mispronounced. But he talked about flow, that state of mind where you lose track of time because you're so engaged in the project you're working with. Is that something you discuss with your clients?
Absolutely. That's absolutely something we discuss. You know what? Typically we start out, if I were to meet you today, I would talk to you about not what you did, but who you were in that last role. We talk about what you left behind because something people don't feel, they don't even feel they're at liberty to talk about disappointments. Now they've saved all this money to retire. They've done that right, and they stumble through the year, the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months because they don't feel at liberty to talk about the fact they might be dissatisfied, because who are they to say they save the money? Well, that's not all there is. They have now just left a place where they were revered, probably a place where they were highly respected. They just left working with many generations. I hear that's a number one disappointment. I miss young people. I miss people of all generations, of collaborating with people of all generations. That's another thing to see how you can get that back in your life. I have one friend who got that back in his life by becoming a lifeguard. He blended two things, what he always wanted to do as a kid and being near the younger generations. So, how are you think about what you will miss the most? And then, we'll move from there. But also, what I have people do is honor what they did because, shoot, for 40, 50 years, they were knocking it out of the park. They were exhausted. They were raising families. They were pulling it all together, and they get to breathe. And I want them to honor and thank themselves. So quite often they'll do that in the form of a letter. They'll do that in form of even a ritual. I had somebody who actually threw a Star Wars party because he started working in 1977 or something when Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of way to ritualize. I think that's really missing in our society. We don't honor an ending. So every new beginning starts with an ending. Let's honor it. Let's spend some time on it. And then from there, it's kind of it's a natural progression to move forward and tease out what you want to bring with you next in the next chapter phase. I'm still trying to figure out a really good word for that. For our next chapter of life, what do you want to bring with you? What traits do you want to bring? I want to bring I had somebody recently say, I want to bring the fact I'm capable, but I don't want to be type A anymore. I don't want to be the boss. I just want to help other people, be physical while I do it, and I don't want to be in charge. So what do you want to pull from all your positive traits? And you talk about this because I think you have people take the Strength Finders assessment. Let's just go for strengths at this point. Screw anything you ever saw on a review that was what you didn't like. Don't do that. You can just move forward with what you want to move forward with this time. So
I appreciate, Suzanne, your mention of the VIA Strengths Finder, because I find that so important that we should continue to use those things, those powers within us that have led to a successful professional life, but perhaps we can incorporate them into life after we retire or slow down our working hours. I know you may be familiar with the book by Cal Newport, "So Good They Can't Ignore You," and he talks about how the concept of follow your bliss and pursue your passions might be somewhat overrated if your bliss is a completely unattainable goal. I mean, if my bliss was ballet dancing, I have a feeling I would be in for a world of hurt, literally and mentally,
Me too.
if I was to dedicate myself to that. But I know I'm a good writer. I'm a pretty good speaker. I'm a pretty good organizer. How can those things be be put into play with perhaps something that brings me a little bit more pleasure or puts me in that flow state that we discussed before. So,
Well, those are fantastic, fantastic traits. Not to interrupt, Andrew, but
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. What was that?
those are fantastic traits. Sometimes people don't realize that they're strong traits. First of all, you have more fun with those ones. Second of all, they're very valuable out in the world. Every one of those traits you just mentioned is something somebody needs. Somebody needs that person that can stand up and talk of the top in front of the room and really project a message. All of it is needed out there in the world. It's just, where do you want to be?
You know, you've teed me up, and we didn't talk about this before, but you've teed me up here because when you talk about what
Good.
the world needs, that makes me think of the Japanese concept of ikigai, which regular listeners to the Great Divorce podcast are probably thinking I'm about to move to Japan because I
I know
talk about it
you
so
have brought that
much.
one up, but it's
It's
good.
but you know one of the core components of ikigai, which is kind of roughly speaking a Japanese term for finding your purpose, is is that happiness or fulfillment comes at the intersection of what the world needs that what you just mentioned, what the world needs, but also what the world uh, can pay you for, what you can potentially earn something from. It doesn't have to be a lot if you saved up a lot of money in retirement, but also what you're good at and what you love to do. So those four things: what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, and potentially what you can be paid for. And even if that payment is only in the form of meeting new people and friendships, as opposed to money if you don't need money, it's a it's a great mentality, I think, to have in approaching retirement and to growing as a person. And you mentioned people missing being around younger people. Well, you were a owner of a fitness club.
Mhm.
I find that the fitter I get and the more I'm out there, on my bike or in the gym or whatever, I come across, I don't always speak to younger people in the gym, not very often at all, but the fact of the matter is you see them out there on the bike trail are more likely to come across a younger person, have a conversation or an interaction of that kind. Let's chat for a little bit about, given your background as a fitness club owner, the importance of health and nutrition and fitness in building a strong retirement and a strong you.
It's so important on so many levels. And you know it too, if you're out there, you mentioned you're out there working out and biking and such. It not only is the foundation for us being able to do every single other thing we want to do in retirement, a little hard to be uh, performing that legacy, performing that volunteer work, hiking those mountains, playing golf if we don't have our health. So if it's something that's been neglected, which happens so often by the time people retire, they have been on the wheel with that goal of retirement, that goal of saving that money. That one thing that falls out quite often is fitness, and it's so easy to bring back. That's something people don't realize. When I owned a fitness studio, we did specialize in baby boomers and their parents. And that was back when I am the youngest as it goes of baby boomers. That was way back when I was a wee one of my late 40s or such. So our average age on the books when I actually figured it out once was 58.
Wow.
And I had 100 clients in there. And I had to hire the best of the best trainers. I had to make sure they knew how to work with the maturing body, because by the time we're 50, there is something that's ailing us. Mine was a tennis shoulder. I couldn't serve overhead anymore. And there's something, and it's really important that that trainer knows how to work with that body. Um, but what my boomers knew was that oh shoot, it was slipping away and they were going to get it back. And I had a client all the way up to the age of the time she was 93 to 98. She came 3 times a week
Wow.
and she walked in ramrod straight. And you didn't know how old she was until you saw her face because she was wrinkled, but her body stood statuesque. She because she had been a physical therapist, so she knew what to do to keep the body going, and she hated bad posture, so she was not going to be bent over. And I used to tell my clients, the thing that ages you before wrinkles is your posture, and
Mm.
keep those shoulders back. So I can't remember what your question. I get so excited about this topic. The bottom line is it's easy to bring back. You can bring it back 20 minutes 3 times a week. I'm actually really good at training people into this because I want them to have fun. I always say that when I used to do intakes at my fitness studio, people would typically sit there and within minutes, they would say, with a panic look on their face, I hate to run. And I go, okay, we won't run.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody's got this thing in their mind if they're not used to working out in a gym or whatever. First of all, you don't have to go to a gym, but if you're not used to moving that body as much as it should be moved, that it's going to be torture, and it just doesn't have to be. My thing that I don't like that I have to make myself do is lift weights because
Mm.
that we know that we have to do the resistance training to keep our bones strong and of course our muscles defined. And so I make myself do that twice a week, but that's the only thing I have to make myself. It's the funny thing is once I get there, I'm fine. I don't hate the act. I hate for some reason that 10-minute drive. I don't know what it is, but I have to do that to earn my yoga because I love my yoga. There will be something you do when you move your body that you can like. We'll find something that you like. And even if it's walking the neighborhood, and if it's a flat neighborhood, I'm probably going to make you walk it longer. But if you've got hills, it's the best thing you can do is just walk, listen to podcasts, listen to Andrew's divorce podcast. I listen to podcasts all the time. That's where I do my study. So like when I was going to meet with you, I take off up the mountain listening to you. So there's a way to work. It's not never a waste of time. There's always something to learn if you want, or something to dance to. You can never dance
Yeah,
to.
that's great. That's great exercise. My wife and I were in Nashville a couple of years ago. We went down on the what is it, Broadway on Nashville, and there's just so many good bands to dance to. So that was quite some exercise.
Yes.
But
I
the
don't know how, but I'll do it in a goofy fashion. The beauty of hitting, I don't know exactly when it hits, but I think it hits in increments with each year you age over 50, is your lack of giving a crap about what you look like. I think I was singing in my gym the other day. I don't care what anybody thinks.
Yeah,
Beauty.
yeah. That brings to mind a quote, and I hope I can remember it. I think it was Winston Churchill who said that when we're in our when we're in our 20s and 30s, we're very preoccupied with what other people think about us, and then we get into our 40s and 50s, and we care less about what people think about us. And then by the time we reach full maturity, we realize they weren't thinking about us at all.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a really good one. Just talking to somebody about that. We were talking about how, we had a friend and I stopped drinking in January. And so we are like, oh, we go to these parties. What are people going to say? And I finally said, nobody's looking at us. Nobody cares.
Yeah,
They're only caring about themselves and what they look like at this party, not what we're.
exactly. Exactly. Everybody's wrapped up in their own little world.
Yeah, yeah.
But what you said about resistance training, I've read somewhere recently that there's actually cognitive benefits to resistance training. So I hope that's true because my trainer puts me through it 3 times a week. Um, I know that what surprised me when I started working out, which incidentally was after my divorce at the age of 52, it was not only the physical benefits in terms of having more energy and filling out my shirts better than I was before. Less pressure at the more pressure at the top of the shirt and less pressure at the waistline. Um, was the how I felt Oh, I felt mentally just clearer head, more alert, more energy, and it was part of a virtuous cycle. The gym was,
I
and
think
I've
the
never been a gym person.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the endorphins that flow through your body when you do it. It literally pumps through I mean, you know for fact when you walk out of there, you feel a little pious, a little like good, really good inside.
Yeah,
That's real.
yeah, and
You know,
you feel proud of yourself as well because
yeah, it's a double whammy, right?
you've gotten
It's
up at 5:45 a.m. and you've
ooh,
this
yeah.
was me today.
I don't
Got up
go
at
that
5:40.
far. But
No, I got
you
up at
don't have to do what Andrew does.
I like to get as much done early in the day as possible.
That's the
Um,
best way it is, but I've never been able to.
I
That's
try. Like you said, you're never too old to learn new tricks, and I find that early to bed, relatively early to rise, some exercise. I'm no monk. I mean, I'll eat some donuts and a buttercream chocolate cake and like the pizza and all that good stuff. I try to keep it to a minimum, but um,
I'm all
generally,
I think as soon as we put hard restrictions on ourselves, it's not going to work.
right.
I totally my weakness is a cookie, and I am in search of the good cookie everywhere I go, and it's kind of my thing. You know, you find a good cookie, let me know, and I keep my weight down. You gotta have fun.
You've got to live. You've got to live.
Yeah.
Look, Suzanne, this has been terrific. Have I missed anything? Is there anything in our conversation today that I haven't asked or we haven't covered that you'd like to communicate to our listeners?
You know what? I think we got this across, Andrew, but this is an exciting time. I want people to know that. I also want them to know if not to be afraid to reach out to me because it's not like I'm a Pollyanna. And I understand this can be a time where it's right, just right with oh gosh, so much trepidation, so much fear. Well, I can't do all the things you're saying because my spouse is sick and I'm helping him or that kind. I understand it's not all roses and butterflies and unicorns, as they say, but we will work to get you the best life moving forward as we can. Just know that it's time to to create a whole new person. If I think people are surprised when they realize that they can step into this next thing as the person they want to be if they haven't been, but really just grabbing your strengths, grabbing your passions, running forward with them with abandon. And then if you head in the wrong direction, big deal. Turn around and go again. There's no right or wrong. And that's a big thing. There's no right or wrong. There's no one way. Everybody's got to pave their own way. And it's fun.
That's great advice, Suzanne. If any of our listeners are interested in availing themselves of your services, how can they find you?
Well, I'll spell my name real fast. It's Suzanne. That's Suzanne, and Campi, Campi, and it's SuzanneCampi.com, just written all together. It's also my LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, I'm on every day. I was a recruiter back in my day, and I cannot let LinkedIn go. It's in my vein. And that's more my social than anything is my LinkedIn. So, yeah.
Terrific. Well, we'll look for your via your website and LinkedIn. Suzanne, thanks very much. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Andrew. It was fun.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Gray Divorce Podcast. To learn more or get in contact with your host, you can visit Andrew's website at transcendretirement.net. Also, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Information provided is educational only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Each situation is unique and should be discussed with your tax or legal advisor prior to implementation. Andrew Hatherley is not an attorney and does not provide legal advice. Information provided is financial in nature. Advisory services offered through Hatherley Capital Management, LLC. Divorce financial analysis services offered through Wiser Divorce Solutions, an affiliated company.